Are you being spied on? I mean, even right now? We hear so much about China being a surveillance state, a new model for dictatorship that watches everything. But very quietly, government and, more importantly, companies, especially big tech companies, are building surveillance states, or the beginnings of them, in the West and right here. Increasingly, in particular, we're getting an internet of things, of alarms and thermostats and cameras, all sorts of things that are connected to the internet and can be used to spy on us. In fact, Samsung even issued a warning with its smart TV, which uses voice commands, and it said, please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted to a third party through your use of voice recognition. Now, that's not an isolated incident. Google was caught having contractors listening into customers using the Google Personal Assistant, Amazon's Alexa, Apple's Siri. Same danger when you do this.
We have a flat tire.
How do I tie a bow tie again?
What's the fastest way to Hartford Hospital?
Okay, Google, play the morning playlist.
Okay, Google, I'm listening.
Alexa, what time is it?
The time is 3:27.
Now, the big tech companies, they're saying they're ending the snooping, which was meant for quality control, improve their voice recognition, or they're going to give customers the power to opt out. But their ability technologically to spy on you for themselves or on behalf of some government is still there in some form. And in fact, in the United States, police have asked the Google-owned company Dropcam, they've even asked them for footage from cameras inside people's homes that was meant to keep an eye on the kids. And Ring, the Amazon doorbell company, that has deals with police to share with them video captured by door cameras. Now, obviously, they'll share it only with the owner's permission, but will that always be the case? And going through that list, I haven't even included all the obvious forms of state surveillance, tapping phones, or increasingly, as we're seeing, say, in Victoria, police using face recognition technology with CCTV cameras, which are almost everywhere, to track people. Trevor Long is a technology commentator who hosts two popular podcasts, the EFTM and Two Blokes Talking Tech. He's also the resident tech expert on Channel 9's Today Show. He joined me earlier. Trevor Long, should we be paranoid about being spied on by the equipment in our home?
I think we should be aware. That's the number one thing. Some people will certainly be paranoid by the thought that pretty much every device in your home has some level of data about you, some level of tracking about it. And I think that's probably the biggest concern for me, is that people don't really appreciate how much information is being gathered, stored and obtained about us, whether you're doing it by choice or just, because you think something's cool and it's in your home and it's helping you out. So that's the concern for me. I don't worry about the spying. I worry about the awareness people have of what could be done with that information.
Would you be careful, for instance, about using voice recognition technology with machines in your home?
Look, I'm not, because the way I look at those things is with Google, Alexa, Siri, all of them, there is not enough computing power in the world for those companies to monitor everything that's being said. They are always listening for those keywords, hey Google, Alexa, or whatever it might be. And it's only then that they're starting to listen. And frankly, I do take the approach that, I don't know why anyone would want to listen in on me, but if I was someone of some high level of government or otherwise, I think we should have concern about whether or not those things should be sitting around listening.
And we're told by these companies, listen, we'll stop snooping. We were doing it only for product, development, et cetera, but the thing is, even if they give you software that enables you to switch these devices off and prevent third parties from listening, there's no guarantee that they can't be switched on without you knowing, is there? If you're in a sensitive government position, say.
Spot on. And here's the problem, and they've all been caught out doing it. Everyone, Google, Apple, the lot. Facebook. The problem was they were trying to make their products better. So this is their story, is trying to make the product better. So when I speak to Google or Facebook or Apple, it interprets my words and gives me a response. And what they want to do is make it so accurate that it's brilliant and it works every time. But what they were doing was sending our actual voice recordings to real people somewhere in the world to listen and go, oh, that's what he said, and yeah, we got it right, or we got it wrong. How can we make it better? But they didn't tell us they were doing that. So, and this is the problem the biggest tech companies in the world have, is they try to do things for their own product benefit without thinking of the implications for us, the consumer, and how we may well go, yeah, I don't feel comfortable with that. I think that's the challenge, is these companies are thinking so much about the product and making it better for either our purposes or their own financial gain that they don't think about how we might interpret that simple thing they're doing, which is, essentially monitoring our words.
Now, Trevor, I don't want, people to start thinking that I'm suggesting that we're living in a sort of, Chinese kind of totalitarian state. We have got, some protections from the law. You can't imagine the government going to Google and saying, I want to snoop in on, Trevor Long every time he uses Siri or something like that. That's not the state we live in. That said, this is technology that in a state like China could be used that way. Yeah,
and the Google system, so Google Home, those devices have dropped to the third most popular in the world because there's one in China that is even bigger now. So, Chinese citizens should be well aware that those devices, while very amazing, while able to control their smart home and do cool things, we don't know what controls and what information is being sent where. Whereas, as you rightly say, here in Australia, I was talking to a major tech company here in Australia just the other day, and they were talking about a system which was mind-blowing to me in its capabilities. But the first question for me was, how are you going to get around the privacy concerns of people? And they said, well, under Australian law, we need to do this, this, this and this. And frankly, it's a barrier for some of these companies because our laws are so strict and so good for us as citizens. But we're also global citizens, Andrew, and that's the problem with global companies launching products that perhaps skirt around the edges of those Australian laws, and that's why we need to be ever vigilant about what they're doing and how they're being utilised.
Trevor, you raise an issue that I hadn't considered there. That is really frightening. You're quite right when you're talking about, say, a company like Tencent or Huawei, which has since been banned from building the 5G network.
Think about the number of people that buy stuff online. Like, I get calls from people who bought a phone on the internet from somewhere. It's probably from China. Now, because it wasn't brought into Australia through the normal processes, there's no guarantees it meets our safety regulations. Well, the same applies if you buy a really cool, amazing bit of tech on the internet, but it has voice recognition through a different system other than Google and Apple. We can't guarantee that it's not sending that information. We can't guarantee it's abiding by our privacy regulations here in Australia.
Well, that's a great point. Just one other thing, Trevor. There's another way I think that we're starting to represent China. Now, China's been building a social credit system that I've talked about on this show. The government grabbing data about each citizen, what they've done, where they've worked, what they've said and what they've borrowed, that kind of thing, what laws are broken. And if people get a bad score, they suddenly find they can't even buy a train ticket, It's a little bit like that Black Mirror episode, famous one, that talked about exactly this. But aren't we starting to get the beginning of the same thing here? I mean, just a simple thing like Uber warning customers that if they get bad ratings from drivers, they won't get picked up.
And this is the problem with the rating system. It's a fantastic system if used well. So think about restaurant reviews, hotel reviews. I had a great experience, I want other people to know. I had a bad experience, I want that business and other people to know. But just because I shut the door a bit harder than an Uber driver might have liked, ranks me down and means that I, standing next to someone else who doesn't slam the door, I won't get an Uber as fast as that person. It's an awareness thing. I don't know that people realise that's happening, but it's happening everywhere. I mean, you think about our major supermarket chains. You use the same credit card in 3 different stores of the same company, and they're tracking you. They know that credit card often buys the same things, and if you happen to have used your loyalty card at some point in that same transaction, they also now know who you are. So the amount of information that retailers, app developers, anyone that you transact with, anyone that you interact with essentially, is mind-blowing. It's data, and it's the most valuable thing on the internet today. The reason we are worth so much money to Facebook is because we are data. Facebook can't make money out of us if they don't know about us. And it's the same with all these companies.
Trevor Long, I think you've only just scratched the surface of something that's going to be a huge issue as we get older and the technology gets more intrusive. Thank you so much indeed for your time.
My pleasure, Andrew.